Hi folks, Florida Man here. We are one of the biggest, and probably the best, of the diplomacy YouTube channels. I am also currently publishing a lit RPG fantasy novel on Royal Road, linked in the description below. Today, we're reviewing one of the more uncommon, but potentially powerful, of the starting alliances available in diplomacy. A potentially fast-moving, but frequently unstable force on the map. The Austrian-Russian Alliance, also known as the Austronaut or the Peppermint Alliance. We'll discuss how this alliance works, what the pros and cons are, how long it typically lasts, and who it typically benefits most in execution. The way the Austronaut works is pretty straightforward. There is an Eastern Triangle. Any two of the Eastern powers, sometimes plus Italy, can work together against the other power. Sometimes plus Italy. As you might imagine, given the limited options, Russia and Austria often work together against Turkey. Now that is probably not quite as common as Russia and Turkey working together against Austria, but it's still quite common, as you might expect, again, given the limited options. The way it works in practice is that Austria and Russia both go southeast as quickly as possible after spring 1901. Sometimes Russia can be very overtly anti-Turkish, such as by trying to sneak into the Black Sea and put an army in Sevastopol, but that's not usually a very effective opening. So more often, Russia tries something more subtle, like convincing Turkey that they're on the same team before the backstab. Sometimes an anti-Turkish plan will involve Russia building a second Southern Fleet in the 1901 builds, having probably put his original fleet in Romania. This is otherwise quite an uncommon choice for Russia, and it's really only a functional choice for Russia if Russia is fighting Turkey, in my opinion. As for Austria, the early anti-Turkish moves are capturing Serbia, keeping Turkey out of Greece, and possibly getting Italy to attack Turkey as well, with the explicit plan with Russia to keep Italy from enjoying any of the gains, since this is the Austrian-Russian Alliance, not the Austria-Italy-Russia Alliance. Otherwise, Austria really can't do very much to directly attack Turkey in 1901. Very often, at least. There are some rare occasions where there's some combination of circumstances that would make it possible for Austria to perhaps work with Russia to kick Turkey out of Bulgaria or keep Turkey out of Bulgaria if Turkey maybe didn't move in the first season or let Russia into the Black Sea or something, but that's not the norm. In the second year, this alliance can steal into the Black Sea and/or Bulgaria, then maybe Armenia, and from there, the progress depends on whether the alliance has the combination of land and sea power necessary to crack the Turkish nut. If Italy is fighting with you, this will be a no-brainer. But assuming it's just Austria and Russia alone working this together, the key question will be if Austria can get a fleet around to the Turkish coast. If Italy is opposing you rather than helping you, that can be challenging. Whereas, with mere Italian neutrality, you have virtually guaranteed success. Even if Italy and Turkey did work together, which they are typically loath to do for very good reasons, I think, the tendency you'll see will be for Austria and Russia to be the more effective team. Their territories are contiguous, which means that they can more easily defend their perimeter against the opponent. They have less ground to actually defend. The only way Russia or Austria can be distracted from this conflict is by England or Germany, and Italy has at least as much hazard from France, so Italy is also in a lot of danger if he's working with Turkey. Austria and Russia would typically also have more units than Italy and Turkey combined, so there are a lot of reasons to expect the Austrian-Russian alliance to have this fight in the bag. So this alliance will typically sweep over Turkey, and then one of a couple of things will happen. Either Austria goes after Italy and/or Germany, and Russia goes after Germany and/or England, or Austria and Russia will go at each other, usually with involvement by neighbors, hoping to get a piece of the loser. So that is actually the big problem in the Austrian-Russian alliance. It can usually accomplish the task that it was formed for well enough, but once Turkey is finished, or close to finished, it becomes about as stable as nitroglycerin. What I think is interesting about this alliance is that it is incredibly potent. If Russia and Austria have a more trusting relationship than what I've described, and are willing to be more loyal to each other than what I've described and what I think is common, They can go extremely far. There's no reason they shouldn't sweep across the map and get to a board top or even a solo for one of them, except that the distrust between Austria and Russia is extremely common, and the pattern of betrayal tends to bear it out. So the pros of the alliance are that it's extremely effective and almost always wins if it actually forms, against Turkey at least, and it all but guarantees, therefore, that both Austria and Russia will outlive Turkey. But the cons are that it usually breaks apart, and with Austria and Russia so close together, their home centers will always be extremely exposed in the event of a betrayal. This is a particularly grievous problem for Russia. Austria ends up somewhat surrounded by Russia on a couple of sides, but it can produce troops closer to Russia's conquests, and is thus more able to perform a good stab. The Russian forces are divided, which is always an issue when Russia conquers Turkey, especially because the Turkish centers are somewhat isolated by the geography of Turkey, unless you have a significant navy in the south, which is difficult for Russia to ever achieve. In the event that Russia has built up a navy, that usually came at the cost of its home centers being less defended against a possible Austrian attack over land. So Russia has a big vulnerability problem, there's no getting around it. Austria is more densely constructed than Russia, so it's less vulnerable to betrayal, especially in this middle game period when Russia's acquisitions are probably just Turkey, bits of Turkey, and if he's lucky, also bits of Scandinavia. Later in the game, if Russia and Austria have stayed together for longer, a stab against Russia might be more difficult. The big winners of this alliance can be Austria and Russia, with the big caveat that Austria is usually a bigger winner than Russia if the alliance breaks up. The other big winner is probably France, because Austria and Russia are big threats to all the powers that threaten French interests, and the losers are potentially Italy, Germany, and England, in that order, unless the alliance breaks up, in which case Germany and England are likely to become winners instead. The alliance unfortunately tends to only last around 4 or 5 game years, but it should probably be an alliance until the endgame, because I think it has sound fundamentals that just usually get undermined by distrust and being too close together. I hope you enjoyed this alliance overview. At this point, I would normally take a moment to thank and credit my Patreon patrons, and my subtitle translators. And I do appreciate them, and I want to give them credit. But I also want to take a moment to shout out something else I'm doing. As I covered in my announcement video, and sort of at the beginning of this video, my new story, Ruthless, Path of Conquest, is now live and available for reading on the website Royal Road. There are 26 chapters available right now, with more coming 3 times a week. I was also uploading audio of these chapters to YouTube, but for reasons that should be kind of obvious, that will be much slower coming than the written material. Following the link to Royal Road in the video description, reading some of my story, Ruthless, Path of Conquest, and giving me 5 stars on that site is almost as valuable at this particular moment in time as literally handing me money. If you can also write a nice review, that's also very helpful. If this story takes off well enough, my pie-in-the-sky goal is to make my living by creating stuff. If it wasn't obvious, this would also be very good in terms of its effect on my likely taking on new and interesting creative projects generally, some of which may be of interest to you. Until next time, Florida Man, out.